Hello, everyone. This is Liz. Here on Monday today, trying to find the video. Oh well. Oh, there we are. So this is Liz. Coming to you live from the Derry Public Library. Apologies for minor technical difficulties. So it is Monday, meaning today is Director Day, and I'm going to talk. I was trying to talk about one of my favorite directors and directors you should know. Not all of them are schlock masters like Lucio Fulci. Some of them actually make good movies. And today I'm talking about a director that I probably would not have known about had my high school teacher not had us watch some of his films. And that's Zhang Yimou. Apologies in advance if I am butchering the Mandarin pronunciation of this. So he is a filmmaker from mainland China. A lot of Chinese filmmakers we know of, like Ang Lee, for example, they are from Taiwan technically, and although the U.S. adheres to the one China policy, there is a big difference between a filmmaker who grew up in mainland China and a filmmaker who grew up in Taiwan, as we're going to explore. So let's get started. Zhang Yimou, his first name is actually Yimou, was born November 14th, 1950. Some places say 1951 in Xi'an, the Shanxi province in China. So his father was actually a major in Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist army. So that got the entire family blacklisted when Mao and the Communist Army won in 1947. So this actually kind of goes back to Taiwan. The nationalists, if they had the means, went to Taiwan, and if they did not and stayed there, life was very difficult for them. So Zhang Yimou actually ended up working on a labor farm in a factory during the Cultural Revolution. If you don't know what the Cultural Revolution is, that was when the Communist Party of China decided, let's just say, a very extreme out with the old and with the new. I mean, there are entire books written on that subject, but that also had an effect on art. So when Mao died in 1976, the Cultural Revolution had ended, and people had already seen the negative effects of that. So he was released from his factory labor, and he went to the Beijing Film Academy in '78. And so he was part of the first generation of filmmakers in China who were devoted to creating art rather than propaganda. So because during Cultural Revolution, if films were made, it was mainly to uh, glorify China and specifically glorify the Communist Party of China. Not too far off from current today, but we'll get there. He worked as a cinematographer, and you can actually see that in the influence of his films. He obviously loves visuals. He loves to utilize color in his films, and he worked his way up to directing his first feature, which was called Red Sorghum in 1987. So this is about a peasant woman who is in an arranged marriage. I wouldn't say it's a romanticized version of the rural China, but it's a very, I would kind of compare it to The Grapes of Wrath. It's a very noble vision of the rural Chinese, and it won the Golden Bear at the Berlin Film Festival, and it starred Gong Li, who would become both his creative partner and personal partner for years. So that makes a big splash in the international community, and also they're noticing, oh, these are the first crop of filmmakers to come out of China. Let's pay attention to this. So he follows that up in 1990 with Judu, again, apologize for my pronunciation, which is a period piece about a woman who embarks on an affair. Takes place in the early part of the 20th century. Says this pre-fall of the emperor. Also, fun fact, this was filmed in Technicolor, and this was the first Chinese language film to be nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. Actually, first Chinese film. I believe there was a Chinese language film from Taiwan before that, so apologies. So he follows that up with Raise the Red Lantern, which was also nominated for an Oscar, also banned in China for a period because of some of the things it depicts. Put a pin on that because it's going to come back. 1992, the story of Chu Ju. All of these star Gong Li, by the way. And in 1994, he makes what many consider to be his best movie and also his most controversial film, To Live. So this is about a family who survives not only the Great Leap Forward, which resulted in mass starvation, famine, the death of, I believe, at least 30 million people in China, and that's just documented, and then the Cultural Revolution. So obviously, Despite the modernizations that were made in China, the Chinese censors still did not like this movie. And actually, I believe, this film still you cannot get in mainland China. So this received the Grand Jury Prize at the Cannes Film Festival, but the Chinese authorities refused to let Zhang Yimou attend the ceremony. And his punishment was he couldn't talk about this film, couldn't talk about the context. He was banned from receiving any foreign aid for his film for 2 years. And if you get foreign aid to make your movies in China, you do have a little bit more leeway of what you can do. So that not only hamstrings him financially, but creatively. So 1995, he makes his final film with Gong Li for at least 10 years, and that's Shanghai Triad. They broke up, and I guess they decided it'd be best not to work together. And he made some other films as well. Keep Cool in 1997, Not One Less, which is about a rural school and a teacher in 1999, and also same year, The Road Home, which actually features a young, pre-Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Zhang. So 2002 comes, and this movie didn't come here until 2004, but the movie Hiro comes out, and this is a big creative pivot. So until now, Zhang Yimou has been doing mostly period pieces, Chinese historical pictures, and pictures that are fairly frank about the trials and hardships that Chinese people have had to face. So with Hiro, he transitions into the wuxia genre film. So these are essentially martial arts movies that are set in ancient China. They can have a little bit of magical realism, but they're more akin to some of the movies that came out in the 70s than, say, his more serious films like To Live. So Hiro comes out, it stars Jet Li, Zhang Ziyi is in it, so actually it's a big hit in America as well. It is a big hit in China. And this is an interesting thing about Hiro. If you watch the film, it actually has a very, I wouldn't say full-on nationalist bent, but definitely a very collectivist, it's better for the glory of China to die type of bent. So this, in many ways, people have seen this as Zhang Yimou kind of trying to get back in good company with the Chinese government. He makes a bunch of movies like these, House of Flying Daggers in 2004, and in 2006 he reunites with Gong Li for Curse of the Golden Flower, which are all good films. Not going to take away that from him. He's actually a very talented action director. But I would say this, do not think that he has sold out his principles, because we'll get to this. So starts to make international films, like 2011's Flowers of War. This is actually about the rape of Nanking and stars Christian Bale, so definitely had more, international investors and international stars. And 2016, he did The Great Wall with Matt Damon. I kind of wanted that movie to be good because I'm like, wow, Zhang Yimou directs an action movie about monsters in the Great Wall. I'll watch that. It's not great. But in between those two, he made a little movie called Coming Home, also starring Gong Li, which is about a man who was in prison during the Cultural Revolution, comes home and his wife doesn't recognize him. So another movie that talks about the very real tragedies that Chinese people faced from Maoist China. And speeding up to today, he makes, roughly today. In 2019, he completes his movie called 1 Second, which is about a man who escapes from a labor farm during, you guessed it, the Cultural Revolution. And once again, it's facing censorship from the Chinese government, this time even more overt than the censorship it faced with To Live. This was officially withdrawn from the Berlin Film Festival due to, quote, technical difficulties encountered during post-production. However, many people are assuming that the Chinese government is strong-handing him into just not releasing this film internationally or nationally. He kind of he walked a thin line for a while because the Chinese government was very happy to have a critically acclaimed director come out of their country, but at the same time, when the content that he makes is critical of the country's past, they tend to not like that. And he is lucky he has not been completely disappeared as some other people have. Very recently, there was an actress, I believe her name is Fan Bingbing. She disappeared for 6 months and reappeared because she did not pay taxes to the government. So I would just say fingers crossed that not only 1 Second gets released, but that Zhang Yimou is safe. What else has he done aside from film? Well, you might recognize him from directing the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. That was a big deal. I went to China in 2004, right around the time they had just learned they'd gotten it, and there was a huge source of national pride. So, and he'd also, for 2008, he'd come off doing stuff like Hiro, so he was kind of China's golden boy director again. And oh, fun fact, he had actually encountered some controversy that he supposedly violated their one-child policy, potentially, or allegedly, let's just say allegedly, fathering 6 children with 4 different women. So I believe with one of them there was more than 2 kids, and he had to pay a fine to the government. So even, I think this goes to show people, even the famous and the well-off or the well-known internationally are not exempt from the Chinese government's policies. So why is he important? Well, obviously, I would say he is one of, if not the first major post-Mao filmmaker to come out of China. And he shows, in his words, Chinese resiliency. There has been some critiques of him that he exoticizes China a bit. There are people who said that the fact that he has a lot of long establishing shots of landscapes. But I think that actually comes more from his background as a cinematographer. If you're a cinematographer, you do learn how to frame shots. You like to have things looking nice, looking pretty. So I think that's more where that comes from. And again, I think when people think of Chinese cinema, a lot of them still think of either Hong Kong action movies, which again, Hong Kong is not mainland China, or they think of, the very cheesy action movies that came out of the 70s. And they forget that, just like with the rest of the world, a lot of places have their own very rich cinema. And I think he is a good starting point if you want to get into mainland Chinese cinema. And if anything, I like the fact that he kind of went back to his roots in terms of directing more hard-hitting films that challenge the official narrative of the Communist Party in China. Because, again, what we know here is likely very different from what people there hear. So, again, I think he's important just in the fact that he's in trying to, I think in some ways, tell his story of what he went through and what his family went through. Where to start? Well, I would definitely recommend To Live. I think that is a great film. Any of the movies where he's worked with Gong Li, I think, are for the most part pretty good. Raise the Red Lantern, I think, is a wonderful film. Also, The Road Home. This was, again, Zhang Ziyi before she became a global star. I think those are always interesting. And if you want something that's a little less heavy, Hiro, Curse of the Golden Flower, and House of Flying Daggers are 100% fun. And again, I think the fact that you can see him do a great human drama like To Live, and then see him do a wuxia martial arts style film like Hiro shows the range of the man. So hopefully you'll check out some of his films. I know that we have a few at the Derry Public Library, and I will see you tomorrow with What's on Netflix. Have a good day.